So the way that I'm organizing the discussion is that I want to first focus on the content of the work, and then, since you're architect, I will also focus on the form and representation and talk about that. So when I read through his work and his question, why the blue environment, and why are you interested in the blue environment? I was reading, and then I came to this, to one of your presentation or discussions, the blue environment as a mental construct. And some of you might know Kevin Lynch, that he introduced this idea that a relationship with the city is through a mental map. And the mental map is the way that we understand the city, and it's to be reduce the information, get rid of the information that we don't need, and our brain starts to identify nodes past 5 of them, nodes past district, edge, and landscapes that we're working with. And I find that that's very interesting. That's kind of what you're trying to do in your work. And I want to know if, because it's kind of bringing, and we are all, most of the time, we are unconscious about that mental map. And what you're trying, or what you're doing in your work is kind of bringing some of the negative aspects and sometimes the positive aspects of that mental map. And I want to know what you think about that. You know, if you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is people like Kevin Lynch that probably did have an early influence on this work when I was really really diving into it in earnest as a graduate student, because that's when I was reading a lot of books like that. And actually now sort of realizing with these more recent projects that are becoming more sculptural that those people I actually need to go back to and start reading again. And what I sort of noticed is that even though Kevin Lynch wrote all this quite a long time ago now, it still seems surprisingly relevant.
Still fresh,
yeah. That manages to help us interpret the built environment in very sort of accessible ways, but it's never sort of simplifying them in any way. It's a way to sort of access and understand our environment. And I think that's what I'm very interested in getting into.
I think the way that we set up the camera in your car, it's still some of the information from. It's kind of trying to understand the unconscious way we understand the world. And I think that was very interesting. I realized learning from your work that some of your work is a critique of the North American, you can correct me if I'm wrong, a critique of North American built environmental landscape. And by learning more about it, I realized that it's also a critique of the machinic modernism, the heritage that we get from the modernism area. And you talked about it, I was happy, okay, my reading was correct. I want to hear more about it, if you want to talk about it more.
Yeah, I guess you can address that and also what you were just talking about. I think that's one of the things that really interests me as well, and Phil's sadly on, but we talked about this as well, as far as how we're kind of, in a certain way, we're prisoners of our environments that we've created. They shape our lives in all sorts of different ways that we just, don't take the time often to pay attention to, or you try to get from A to B or whatever. But that way A to B has been designed is like shaping your life in a particular way. And it's, certainly not everything's planned super well or designed super well. Some things are done extremely well. And I think that part of what I'm sort of interested in is sort of trying to evaluate these spaces and how they sort of shape our lives in certain ways, or how we sort of see the world around us, or just maybe ask us to take a second look at what's around us. And so it certainly filters over into folks like Corbusier and so on, and the obviously enormous impact these people have had over time. Your time as a student, as well as everybody else's lives across any major city for certain. But and I certainly love modernist architecture and design and so on. But at the same time, there's a lot of questions and problems within it. As far as I'm quite interested in sort of more, I guess, at times vernacular things, or there are things that kind of emerge more organically as opposed to things that are necessarily planned on this very large scale. But at the same time, can appreciate how those things are designed. And I think that these sort of tensions are always sort of finding within cities. And sort of how do we have them work together in good ways is not an easy thing to do, I think. It's very, very difficult to have them harmonize in different ways as far as how we move from one.
This is a piece that I really, really love, and there are a lot of reasons for this, and some of this, Kevin, probably wasn't your intention, or maybe it wasn't the focus of the project. So it's called Double Billboard. When I saw it in the exhibition, I said, wow, this is an amazing project. And it relates to a lot of historical ideas that we're doing in architecture. And when I was an undergrad, I was thinking about this problem if I'm looking at a wall that is infinite, frontally. If you're looking at the wall, frontally is infinite. How can I draw that? How can I understand that perspective? And whenever I draw it, it becomes like a cube because it was impossible to draw it because you can't combine frontal view and oblique view. I will explain it more, it will unfold more. So what Kevin did here is that relating to this idea, this vast knowledge that we have in architecture, and most of us learned it in the beginning of a career perspective, that was developed by Leon Battista Alberti, and how perspective works. But it's taking it to a different level, and I want to explain it. I just put another image here that is not completely related, but it has some relationship between creativity. It's the idea of anamorphism. If you look at the painting, and most of you know this painting, it's a very weird painting because there is a juxtaposition of two different point of view, two different perspectives. You see that the skeleton is not relating to the image. You need to move in the space, and suddenly at a specific point of view, you see the skeleton. So it's combining the idea of the frontal and the oblique. And it has a lot of implication in architecture. Especially if you look at some of the classical architecture, try to find it, I ran out of time, in churches, because you need to have an access. And then, because of the constraint of the site, it doesn't allow you to have the depths that you want. And then they use painting and some sort of a distortion to create this tension between the site, the content, and the form. And if you look back at this piece, it's provoking all of those ideas. It's using the double perspective. There's a perspective, and then it's folded, and it's creating a double perspective. So you're looking at frontally at the piece, but the piece is oblique. So I don't know what to say about it, but that's why I really like that piece. And it's the problem of that infinite wall. It's infinite for instance.
Yeah, I think...
Maybe it's a false reading.
No, not at all. I mean, I think with some of the things we get to do as artists is sort of try things out. And sort of like, we have hints and hunches, and the idea is to simply run with those and just do it. This was kind of one of those things where I knew I needed to make these, but wasn't sure, I wouldn't know really what they would be like until I actually made them. So I was trying to select different images that I thought would work well with this format, not knowing sort of what different interpretations I would get. And so since these are fairly recent, it's actually really great to hear these different ideas related to perspective with them, since I'm still sort of trying to wrap my head around what's happening with them. And I think it's exciting for me, and obviously Arash is finding it interesting as well.
It's very
basic. It's wonderful too.
It's a very architectural problem.
Yeah.
We deal with it a lot, and most of us don't pay attention to this frontal and oblique, how we can relate to space and how it can form our social interaction.
Yeah.
And that's kind of very interesting. And we can talk about it and we open it up to. And I